All right, more preteristic nonsense from here, Pastor Langdon. Preterist nonsense. Let's listen.
I would recommend you check out that episode. It is excellent. We started to, where we continue down this road of unraveling futuristic thinking and demonstrating one by one through one scripture after another how that gloomy prediction, that doom and gloom sort of eschatology, where you have a future tribulation and wars and rumors of wars and false prophets and all those different kinds of persecution and turmoil, all of that stuff already happened.
When? When did it already happen? Well, for the high partial preterists, that happened around 70 AD, or at least the events leading up to and including 70 AD. So we don't have to worry about that Antichrist stuff anymore. We don't have to worry about any of that preteristic nonsense. Now, Pastor Langdon talked about futurism, futurist nonsense, which is equally nonsense as preterism is equally nonsense with futurism. Where did these two systems come up with? When were these two systems first systematized? Let's look at this. Francisco Ribera was a Spanish Jesuit theologian identified with the futurist Christian eschatological view. The apocalypse, the Antichrist, a single individual. See the problem there? Antichrist is not a single individual. It is an empire, a beast that rises up out of the sea, Revelation 13, 1 through 10. To accomplish this, Ribera understood the 1260 days, 42 months, time times half a time of prophecy, literally rejecting an interpretation as 1260 years. Why? Because that's what all the reformers were talking about. Day equals year principle. Here's Jonathan Edwards. Jonathan Edwards was later, but Jonathan Edwards is just being in line with the Reformation. It is certain that the 1260 days or years, which are so often in Scripture mentioned as the time of the continuance of Antichrist's reign. Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, talking about the little horn reigning for a time times half a time. 1260 days, time times half a time means 1260 literal years, and these 1260 years did not commence before the year of Christ, 479. So the 1260 years, what Edwards is saying here, began after the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. Francisco Ribera, the Jesuit, and later Robert Bellarmine, against the Protestant Reformation, right here, Robert, his interpretation was then followed by Robert Bellarmine, okay, who was a Jesuit as well, and the Spanish Dominican Thomas Malvenda. So that is the futurist system. But let's look up the preterist system that Pastor Langdon wants to espouse, and Gary DeMar and others. Let's look up the preterist system. Louis de Alcazar was another Spanish Jesuit theologian. Why were there two different Spanish Jesuit theologians at around the same time period? The time period like after the Reformation has gotten underway for a couple decades now. Why would two different Spanish Jesuits come up with two different interpretations, completely opposed to each other, because it was in order to combat the Protestant Reformation, putting forward what would later be called a preterist view of biblical prophecy, so that the prophecies of the Antichrist could not apply to the papacy. That is why they put these together. To get all eyes off the papacy. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Preterism and futurism both accomplish the same goal. The same goal, to get all eyes off the papacy regarding Bible prophecy. Whereas if we go to, so Antichrist, it's all about the Antichrist, the identity of the Antichrist. Preterism and Futurism opposed to each other, but each accomplishing the same goal, namely the diverting of men's minds from perceiving the truths contained in God's prophetic word, especially with regard to the identity of the Antichrist. Preterism says Antichrist was in the distant past. We don't need to worry about any of that anymore. And that's when he's talking about doom and gloom. We don't want to be doom and gloom Christians, yet they are postmillennialists. Pastor Langdon is a postmillennialist. And if we just take a look at Revelation chapter 20, it's going to pop up here, Maybe not. Let's see. Revelation chapter 20. There we go. Revelation 20. Boom. Notice even the postmillennialists have to have a doom and gloom type of mentality because Satan bound for 1,000 years during the millennium. If you're a postmillennialist, look at after the 1,000 years, Satan must be released for a little while. And what does he do? When the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released and go out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth. That is the whole earth. Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. Their numbers like the sand of the sea, and they march up over the broad plain of the earth and surround the camp of the saints, the beloved city. But fire came down from heaven and consumed them. So there's going to be a great satanic deception at the end of the millennium. But do you guys talk about that at all? Of course not. Everything is just, honky-dory, la, la, la. I'm not going to pay attention to any of these negative things. I'm only going to talk about this false optimism that I have with my postmillennialism. So, Preterism, Louis de Alcazar. Futurism, Francisco Ribera, later followed by Robert Bellarmine. Both systems are fallacious. In fact, it's the Jesuits of old who, if they knew this conflict between preterists and futurists was going on in otherwise Bible-believing churches, would be absolutely thrilled. Some authors who revealed the truth about the systematic origins of both preterism and futurism. Notice this quotation from Joseph Tanner in his book, Daniel and the Revelation. Accordingly, towards the close of the century of the Reformation, that is the 16th century, two of Rome's most learned doctors set themselves to the task, each endeavoring by different means to accomplish the same end, namely that of diverting men's minds from perceiving the fulfillment of the prophecies of the Antichrist in the papal system. The Jesuit Louis de Alcazar brought into prominence the Preterist method of interpretation, which asserted that the prophecies of Antichrist were fulfilled before the popes ever ruled at Rome, therefore could not apply to the papacy. On the other hand, the Jesuit Francisco Ribera, again, two different Jesuits, later followed by the premier Jesuit scholar Robert Bellarmine, tried to set aside the application of the prophecies to the papal power by bringing out the Futurist system, which asserts that these prophecies refer properly not to the career of the papacy, but to that of some future supernatural individual who is yet to appear and to continue in power for 3.5 literal years, thus denying the day equals year principle that Jonathan Edwards just talked about, that John Gill talked about, that Adam Clark talked about, and many, many others. Matthew Henry, John Napier, Scottish mathematician, inventor of logarithms. One of the first Scottish works on Bible prophecy was written by John Napier, day equals year principle. There are other quotations just like this, even from Roman Catholic scholars who recognize the origins of preterism and futurism in the papal scholarship, papal priests. Now, let me ask you all, don't you see that Jeff Durbin or, Apologia or Pastor Langdon are all in the preterist school of interpretation? They're following that first systematized by the Jesuit scholar Louis de Alcazar. Don't dispensational futurists see that they are following the futurist school of prophetic thought, first systematized by another Jesuit? I say don't fall for either one of these fallacious schools of prophetic interpretation without at least studying historical theology and the historicism of our Protestant forefathers concerning issues of Bible prophecy. We all owe it to God to treat His Word better than that. So, Daniel chapter 7. What rough beasts and the little horn? What rough beasts and the Antichrist? The little horn of Daniel 7 is the Antichrist. Dispensational futurism, or just futurism, says that Antichrist will be single solitary individual. Preterism nowadays, with the Kenneth L. Gentry type, that Antichrist was either a series of pagan Roman emperors, or Kenneth L. Gentry's view is that it was Nero, a single solitary individual human being. They both make the same errors. Both of them do. That the Antichrist was or will be a single solitary individual human being. Yet the prophecy says it will be a beast that is an empire. Both of these systems hold false views. Daniel 7 gives us a repeat and expanded version of Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 7, the little horn is the Antichrist. So the fourth beast is the Roman. You got four beasts that come up out of the sea, indicating that a beast is not a single solitary individual human being. Again, the first beast was like a lion. So these four beasts, the first is Babylonian Empire, followed by the Medo-Persian Empire, a second beast. The third one, like a leopard, that is the Grecian Empire. And then the fourth beast indicates the Roman Empire, which lasted all the way up until the 5th century AD, not 70 AD, not 70 AD. The Roman Empire continued on for another 446 years after the crucifixion, death, burial, resurrection, and ascension of Christ in 30 AD. Another 446 years the fourth beast continued on. And it had 10 horns. These 10 horns symbolize the 10 lesser tribal vassal nations that made up the Roman Empire after its fall in 476 AD. Out of the 10, 3 of them will be plucked up by the roots before the little horn could arise. And this little horn would have a mouth speaking great things. That would be the Antichrist, the man of sin who sits in the temple of God, that is the church of God, having a mouth speaking great things, haughty words. The four beasts, of course, Babylonian, Medo-Persian Empire, Grecian Empire, Roman Empire, came to an end in 476 AD. The 10 horns symbolize the 10 tribal kingdoms that made up the Roman Empire: the Ostrogoths, Burgundians, Vandals, Heruli, Visigoths, Suevi, Alemanni, Franks, Saxons, and Lombards. Now, 3 of these would be plucked up by the roots before the little horn could arise. How did that happen? Well, first of all, Dr. John Gill, out of this kingdom, that is out of the Roman Empire, are 10 kingdoms which sprung out of the Roman Empire, those 10 horns. At about AD, upon the dissolution of the Roman Empire, about AD 476, he gives Mede's list, very similar to my own. He gives Sir Isaac Newton's list, very similar to my own again. And the fourth beast, Daniel desired to know the truth about the fourth beast and about the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn that came up, before which 3 of them fell. Because this little horn had a mouth speaking great things, and this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them. This little horn is the Antichrist. 3 of the 10 would have to be removed first. That was the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. The Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. And by the way, of these 10, the Ostrogoths, Vandals, Heruli, these 3, the Heruli, really it's in the order in which they were removed, was the Heruli, then the Vandals, then the Ostrogoths. But the Burgundians, Visigoths, Suevi, Alemanni, Franks, Saxons, and Lombards are still the nations that make up Europe to this day. In fact, in French, I think Germany is called, let's do this. I'm going to Google English to French. English is Germany. Alemania. You see that? Alemania. The French still call Germany Alemania to this day. Isn't that something? See, the Alemanni are really, it's Germans are the descendants of Alemanni or Alemania, and the Franks, the French-speaking people to this day don't call Germany Germany; they call it Alemania. Lombards being Italy, Saxons, of course, way up in Britannia, or Britain, which was a part of the Roman Empire. Roman Empire extended all the way up into Britannia. That's what its ancient name was, Britannia. The little horn would make war with the saints and prevail. Okay, Heruli, Vandals, Ostrogoths usurped. These were Arian, the last vestiges of the Arian Christological heresy. So even after the fall of the Roman Empire, there were still Arians around. Still Arians. I go over Heruli King Odoacer usurped Romulus Augustulus, who was just a boy. He was the last emperor of the Roman Empire, at least in the West. Odoacer was an Arian, but he was tolerant toward the Catholics. Catholic here meaning they were Trinitarians. Catholic and Trinitarian is really, that is what goes hand. They go hand in hand with each other. If you're Catholic, it means you're Trinitarian. Even Baptists say we're Catholic because we're Trinitarians. Okay, Theodoric, the Vandals, vanquished by General Belisarius at the behest of the Eastern Emperor Justinian. And then Belisarius usurps the Ostrogoths from Rome, and that was the third. The Code of Justinian, very important here. 2 official letters from Justinian that were incorporated into the code, and these carried with them all the force of a royal edict. Watch the unbiblical ecclesiology here. Unbiblical ecclesiology. He declared that in these letters that carried all the force of a royal edict, Justinian legally declared the Bishop of Rome as the head of all the holy churches and also the head of all the holy priests of God. Though this legal recognition of the Bishop of Rome's ecclesiastical supremacy is dated to 533 AD, the imperial edict from the east carried no force while the Arian Ostrogothic kingdom was still in power in Rome. Thus, it was only after 538 AD, with the defeat of the Ostrogoths, that the royal edict could take effect. Thus, the little horn had come to a seat in great authority for 1260 years. That's when the 1260 years that Jonathan Edwards was talking about began. 1260 years. Now, 1260 years, starting at 538 AD, just add 1260 years to 538 AD, and what do we come up with? When was the deadly wound inflicted upon the papacy? Okay. Napoleon and the Catholic Church. Watch this. It was always going to be France that dealt the deadly wound upon the papacy. It was the Pope Pius VI at the time. General Louis-Alexandre Berthier, one of Napoleon's generals, marched into Rome and entered it unopposed in 1798, 1260 years from 538 AD. And proclaiming a Roman Republic, demanded the Pope renounce his temporal power. That was the deadly wound. And of course, in prophecy, we're told the deadly wound would be healed. Okay? The deadly wound would be healed. And so the papacy, the Antichrist, continues on to this day. So, lots of information in there. Until, of course, let's see, what else do we want to do? We did that. I got that. I think that's about it. Pastor Langdon. Yeah, already happened. The Antichrist, don't need to worry about that, except, look at here. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, because watch in verse 8. The lawless one will be revealed, man of sin, son of perdition, whom the Lord Jesus will kill with the breath of his mouth and bring to nothing by the appearance of his coming. That means the lawless one, the man of sin, son of perdition, the Antichrist, the papacy, continues in power all the way up until the second advent. Until the second advent of Christ. Okay? So the Antichrist still has a throne. If you don't want to believe that the Antichrist has a throne, here's Revelation 13. Notice the beast rising up out of the sea, that's the Antichrist. It is an empire, not a single solitary individual human being. This is the papacy. To it, the dragon gave his power and his throne, and great authority. And they even worship the dragon and they worship the beast. If they worship how the beast tells them to worship, they're actually worshiping Satan. Look at this. A mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words. We see that all through Daniel 7 with regard to the little horn. They're the same entity. The little horn of Daniel 7 is the same as the beast, the sea beast of Revelation 13, 1 through 10. Notice, it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them, just like in Daniel chapter 7. It will make war against the saints and prevail over them. Make war on the saints, Revelation 13, verse 6, and conquer them. Those who dwell on the earth will worship it. Worship it. So this is all about worship. Worship the dragon. Worship the beast. They will worship it. Worship, worship, worship is the biggest thing here. This isn't about paying taxes. Jesus said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. Render unto God that which is God, and that is worship. You render unto God worship. If you got to pay, taxes or whatever, that's Caesar's stuff. Let Caesar have what is his. This is about worship. And notice there's another beast that rises up out of the earth. Around the same time, this sea beast goes into captivity. Pope Pius VI, taken into captivity by the power of the sword. That is, by military power of the French armies. Let's see. So captivity goes with the sword, with the power of military power of the French Republic. That is around the time this other beast was rising up out of the earth, having two horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. Now, again, a beast is an empire. An empire. Anybody who thinks the United States of America is not an empire is wrong. According to the prophecy, the United States is an empire, and look at what its ultimate goal is: to get the inhabitants to worship the first beast, or worship as the first beast tells them to worship. Making an image for the beast, an image of the beast, image of the beast. Speaking might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Causes all, both small and great, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead. This is the mark of the sea beast. The mark of the sea beast is not enforced by the Antichrist. It is enforced by the earth beast, also known as the false prophet. This is the United States. There is no other dominant empire on planet Earth than the United States. Let's see if progress painting. Let's see if it brings it up in Wikipedia. American Progress. Here we go. American Progress. So American Progress, here is a painting, John Gast, 1872. Manifest Destiny, Settler Colonialism. Here we go. The lady who is depicted here is Columbia, I believe. John Gast was Prussian-born. He's German. Would be Prussia. American Progress, painting of a profound historical, has become a seminal example of American Western art, serving as an allegory for Manifest Destiny, American westward expansion, masterpiece. The woman in the center is Columbia, the personification of the United States, and on her head is what Prophet calls the star of the empire. Notice that? The star of the empire. Now, see if you can see there's a star right there on her forehead. The star of the empire. Now, notice with westward expansion, remember what an empire is. It is a suzerain empire. A suzerain is a kingdom that has lesser vassal nations or vassal kingdoms under its authority. That's why the Bible calls them beasts. These are suzerain kingdoms. Were there lesser tribal vassal nations that were here before the Western settlers? Yes, there were. They were a loose-knit groups, many different tribes and nations of indigenous people, and we have made them our vassals. We are the suzerain and they are the vassals. And so we are an empire just on our own continent because we have lesser vassal tribal nations that were here before. See? So by definition, by biblical definition, we are an empire, the United States. And that's why, again, the star of empire is on her forehead. That is, as Columbia moves westward, indigenous people and a herd of buffalo or bison flee from her and the settlers who follow. Farmers diligently tilling a field, a clear symbol of the Midwest as developed and colonized region. Indeed. Farming, you want to talk about the American Midwest, is the largest arable agricultural landscape on planet Earth. We can grow so much food. In fact, the United States produces so much food. We produce about 35% more food than we can possibly consume. This is why the United States is the world's largest food exporter on the planet. We export more food than anybody else, per capita or per pound or whatever, compared to anybody else. You see she's got the what is that? Telegraph? What'd you call it back then? But essentially mass communication. She brings that with her, slung around her arm, holding in her hand. Means for mass communication. You got the railroads. That's shipping. More of the wagons being pulled. Well, that's your over-the-road trucking right there was wagon. Okay. Much more expensive than rail. Rail was way more efficient than over-the-road trucking. It still is to this day. Over-the-road truck driving is the most expensive way to ship anything because it takes a lot of money to build and maintain roads. Rail is much cheaper, and the cheapest way to ship anything is either through internal navigable waterways or deep water, blue water shipments. The United States is well equipped for all of these things. What else can we say about the United States? Richest. Let's go to the United States. Let's go to GDP of, USA, 25 trillion. There, I just gave it away. How about GDP of the UK? About 3 trillion. GDP of France, almost 3 trillion. How about GDP of Germany? You know what it is? 4 trillion. How about GDP of, that's because Germans, as long as they're not shooting anybody and nobody's shooting at them, Germans always do well. They are the German juggernaut of Europe. Super efficient, super good at what they do. Japan. Yeah, see, even more than Germany. Japan is fantastic. You can do China, but let's do Russia. The problem with China's is that it's completely overinflated and out of whack. Russia's $2.24 trillion GDP. Russia, there's a reason why John McCain called Russia a gas station posing as a country. Okay, that's what Russia is, a gas station posing as a country. They just have a massive inferiority complex, and so they try to cover up by having a massive superiority complex as a veil to cover up their inferiority. 2.24 trillion USD is their GDP. Absolutely crazy. GDP of Russia versus Texas. Never saw that before. Texas reached 1.8 trillion. Okay. Ooh, let's see what Apple is worth. How much is Apple worth? Okay. Apple is worth 3.38 trillion. One American company, Apple, is worth more than the GDP of Russia. Okay, this is what we're dealing with here. This is what we're dealing with with regard to the stupidity and asininity of Vladimir Putin. This is how stupid the Russians are. I can't put it any other way. They're just dumb. They cannot even compete with all of Europe, just the NATO nations of Europe. They can't compete with them economically, much less them plus the United States. When the United States has one company, Apple, that is literally worth more than the GDP of Russia. Apple could literally buy out the country of Russia if they wanted to. I mean, just looking at it in numbers, scenarios. Boy, what's it been doing? Ooh, okay. We were at 197. We're up here. We were at 234. We were down to 213. Still pretty good. So for the past year, up 27% in the past year. Wow, that's huge. 5 years, up 306% in the past 5 years. That is insane. Wow. I didn't even know that. I just looked that up today. I had no clue. Should probably look up what Amazon's doing. But yeah, Louis d'Alcazar, Preterism. Let's see. Whoops, 95. Yeah, hyperinflation, economic collapse, and national disintegration on the China issue. China is collapsing. It's going to continue to collapse economically in every way. Unfortunately, with a collapsing empire like China, they will lash out before they collapse, just like Vladimir Putin's doing. His country is collapsing. It's been in decline for quite some time, and so he's got to lash out. And these are the death throes of countries or empires that are collapsing. So China will do the same. But in the next 15, 20 years, we might see upwards of 500 million Han Chinese people starving to death. All because commie bastards know nothing about finance. And I do call them commie bastards. That's what happens when you have bad government. Commie bastards they're clueless. They're clueless about finance. They don't have to know about finance. They don't care. Whereas in American companies, capitalist countries, they have to maintain their own budgets. You know what I mean? They have to care. And nobody cares if they go bankrupt. Somebody else will just spring up in their place. Nobody cares. Unless you're more of a monopolistic type of situation, in which we tend to not allow in the United States, but we have allowed it to a certain extent. So Pastor Langdon, preterism? Nope. Not good. Traces of defeatism. Well, hey, bud, look at postmillennialism. After that, after the millennium, Satan will go out to deceive the nations. Gog and Magog, gather them together for battle. You guys got to answer these questions too, but you don't, because you don't think through your own position. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. 30 minutes. I think this is a long enough video. We'll talk to you soon. Soli Deo Gloria.